coming through to them. So everything gets interpreted through the soul and the soul's will.
Yeah, and so our emotion is an expression of the soul's will.
Yes.
You've said that. But you've also said that emotion is the thing that transcends language, or if you like, it's the soul's way of communication.
Yes, and this is probably the proper way of saying it. It is the soul's language. Emotion is the soul language.
Yeah.
And the language, the words that we use, and even in the spirit world, you might use thoughts rather than words because you are able to telepathically communicate, particularly in the spirit world, you learn that. Of course, it's a capacity we have here on Earth as well, but most people don't learn it on Earth, so they learn it in the spirit world to telepathically communicate. But they're still communicating thoughts.
Yes.
They're not actually communicating emotion. But the way the soul wants to communicate is emotionally.
Yeah.
So once you become a one with God, you actually are only ever communicating emotionally, and the thoughts are generated by the flow of the emotion. So the emotion is so descriptive that it tells you exactly what to think. So if that makes sense. So in other words, what you're thinking is going to be the complete expression of that soul's emotion. So you could describe it right down to the tiniest detail using language, but it'll be because you're so sensitive to the emotion, it now has a language of its own.
Yes. Okay, there's a few things I want to bring up from what you just said.
Sure.
One, you're talking about in the spirit world, being so sensitive to emotion that you could almost describe the thoughts, or it creates
You can describe the thoughts.
Yeah. That's the case here on Earth now, though, isn't it?
Of
All
course.
of my thoughts are coming from emotions,
Correct.
either the suppression or the expression of.
Correct, but that's
emotion.
not the way most people interpret them, through their emotions. So what generally happens is this in terms of communication on Earth, and this is the problem with communication on Earth, is that we have emotions. We don't usually, we very, very rarely allow their communication. So what we do is that those emotions generate some thoughts.
Yep.
Those thoughts are translated into language. That language drives what we say to somebody else. Of course, on the receiving end, that language gets communicated into thoughts. And of course, unfortunately, that's determined by how their soul is already feeling. So, you know, you can say something to a person, but their soul might be feeling something completely different. And so the thoughts that you're trying to express verbally enters their ears, gets translated into, the language gets translated into thoughts. And then, of course, the thoughts get misinterpreted because now the emotion determines what thoughts are going to be reflected back into emotion inside of their soul. So it's sort of like we're going emotion, thoughts, language, transmission, reception, language, thoughts, emotion, down the other chain. Yeah. And there's basically, if you think about it, there's 8 different ways that something can get misinterpreted. And this is why most people misinterpret each other most very frequently, because they can't actually feel the intention, the direct intention of the actual flow of the emotion.
Yeah, and so this is where we were a little while ago, where you were saying that basically, so in an ideal world, if I'm completely open to emotion, so all of the energy within me is flowing, and you are in the same state, then this is the recipe for perfect understanding and communication between two souls.
Correct.
So this is when I'm most fluent in the language of emotion.
Yes, you wouldn't even need to verbally express anything.
Yep.
And the other person, because of their own sensitivity, would know exactly what you're feeling,
yep,
and even the thoughts it would generate. Because if they are completely at one with God, it would generate the same thoughts within them.
Yeah.